Hello, everybody, and welcome to this week's episode of the Press Playbook, where we bring on a different BAM team member each week to highlight some of the rad placements we're getting for our clients. This week, I am bringing on Chris, who recently got their client in Vogue. Let's see how they did it. Chris, so happy to have you on. Thank you for joining us today.
Hi, Kendall. It's so great to see you and be talking with you
I'm
today.
I am so excited to go into this placement, given that Coachella just ended. And I'm
Yeah.
so upset that I didn't go to Coachella. So I'm very excited about this one. Before we dive into this placement, though, tell us about you, your role at BAM, who your clients are. Let's dive into that.
Yes, we're fully in music festival season, and this year people have been calling Coachella like the influencer Olympics. So just before we dive more into that, so I'm Chris. I'm an account manager here at BAM. On the day-to-day, I work with clients across B2B, B2C, working on their PR strategy and execution as well.
I love that. I think it's so fun. And I love the differentiation. I feel like, especially at BAM, you can have so many different sectors, which makes it, you never get bored. Let's say
Yeah.
that. You never get bored. And our clients are awesome. So let's jump into Metricool. Tell me a little bit about what they do, who they are. Let's get that background before we go into the pitch here.
Yeah, so Metricool is a social media management platform. Their real crux is their ability to gather data within their platform. So within it, you can schedule posts, you can analyze how the posts are doing. They even have like kind of more of like a competitive feature where you can pull engagement and any stats around there to like make sure that your social media posts and strategy overall is working really well.
As a marketer, incredible. That's so
Yes.
helpful. That's such helpful information. So before we look at your actual pitch, let's dive into what internal conversations were happening at Metricool. What did they have going on? How did this tie into festival season? And I guess just how did the whole pitch idea come about?
Yeah, absolutely. So with Metricool, they're known for like their data studies. And when we're not working with any certain reports, they release anything from like Instagram studies to a year-end review of like all of the platforms. We look at pop culture data or like just moments, and our team, we strategically like assess like which moments are coming up in the next couple of weeks or months that could be interesting that would go wider on the internet. And that's how we look at things, and that's how Coachella really came up. It was something that we activated on last year as well, and this year I'd say is our most successful year in terms of like how we were able to pull what would resonate one with media and just kind of observing online, like on TikTok and Instagram, how our influencers, brands, and just like the general user public is talking about it. And coming into this year, we were like, okay, we really need to make sure we have a good pulse on which brands we're going to follow and what data we're going to pull right after weekend one ends. So a lot of this is attributed to speed as well as being chronically online, I would say, and making sure. So there's a lot of brands and different creators to follow. So for this year, we noticed that, for instance, Poppy was doing a bigger activation with Jake Shane and Mickey Gordon and building their own individual houses to kind of like promote their presence at Coachella as an example of one that like we felt really stood out. 818 and Rode, of course, with Rode, Haley is Justin Bieber's partner. And so we're like, that would be really interesting to see how that brand specifically taps into Coachella on top of that. And so we pulled together those like top 10 brands that were like, okay, this will be the most interesting. And both of them were on it. And then come Monday morning, our team immediately kind of like went in and looked at the data and we're like, okay, that's when we start siling out like, okay, what's interesting, what's not interesting. What's also helpful is because this is something we did last year. For instance, Poppy was at Coachella last year as well. We were able to see kind of like the year over year data on like what worked for them, what didn't work, in terms of what Metricool was able to pull in terms of engagement, even follower increase, stuff like that. And from there, we just threw together a pitch and we're like, hey, like here's some things that we observed, but also offered to the reporters, like if there's anything that you're looking at as well, like we could pull that like by the next day. And that's something that worked really well here with Maddie at Vogue, who happens to be also someone we worked with before in the past on a Emily in Paris brand story. So it was cool to kind of see it come around. And in this instance with Maddie, she was like, "Are you looking at Justin Bieber's like own clothing brand?" And she wanted data around that, and so we pulled that. And on top of that, she was like, based on this data, we would love to kind of see what is Metricool's responses to, is there like Coachella marketing fatigue?
Mhm.
What's worked well for brands? What was the strategy here? And like, is it worth the investment for brands to like do Coachella? Because it comes with a lot of money and time and effort and planning as well. And so the data spoke for itself, and we were able to infuse more of that, how would you say, like kind of like thoughts from our own spokesperson, and that worked out really well.
The whole Coachella ecosystem and like the influencer world and just the benefit from that is so interesting. I feel like that
Yep.
data would have been so cool to see. So I'm very
Yes.
jealous of the reporter who got this, who got to actually look at that because that's so beyond interesting. Let me pull up the pitch here. I'm gonna make this full screen for us. I know you touched on this a little bit already, Chris, but
Yeah.
walk through this pitch one more time. Tell us the really important parts and why you included them, and then we can start to wrap up here.
Yeah. So I would say like what really helped is like while we had like a big repository of brands and data to go off on, we also like in on that Monday morning looked at like, okay, like what were people talking about the most? And just kind of siloed from there. Of course, Real Actives had a really successful marketing campaign, from the looks of it, with Alex launching her skincare line leading up to the weeks of Coachella. So we thought that would be really interesting since one, there's a lot of beauty brands at Coachella to say, and Real Actives had their own house as well. So
Mm,
we kind of led with that. Revolve Festival was something that I would say was probably bigger in the past couple of years, but something that we didn't see as much hype around this year. And so just like kind of like piecing that together, we pulled together what would be like most interesting. So of course, Poppy's here, 818, Road, Curo Cosmetics was also going after. And then with Starbucks, they had really big name influencers like Victoria Paris and Brand Flakes kind of join, and that also came at the moment where people were also talking about it on both the positive and negative side. And so it was really just like, okay, here's a look at what we see, and it was a team of us, like what are we seeing on our feeds, what can we say from that. And we're also working with the Metricool team just to kind of like silo that out as well from their opinions as well. And so I think that's what really worked well, is just having that good pulse on like, okay, what do people really care about? And what would resonate with reporters coming out of this. And I would say we were able to activate on this pitch like within, I would say probably 2 to 3 hours into that Monday morning. And I think that helped us out a lot as well because we knew the conversations around Coachella is and has always been very crowded in it
to-
itself. Yeah.
Totally. I love looking at these numbers. This is awesome. You guys,
Yeah.
this is so fun. Well, let's stop sharing our screen here. Chris, this was so beyond helpful. And I know you said before that this was a journalist who you've worked with in the past. So you guys did already have that
Yeah.
existing relationship, which always helps. You guys had the stats in there. You guys had really interesting data and it was timely. So I feel like for
Yeah.
anyone listening to this, this goes, I feel like right back to what all of our BAMPs say. Stats, timely, good hook, the right reporter always wins. And I just love this
One.
topic. I'm a huge Coachella stan. Poppy, we love Poppy. Jake Shane, we
Yeah.
love Jake Shane. So
Yes.
we have a ton of fun. That sounds great. To Chris, to end this, tell us your number one tip for founders who are looking to land press.
I would say in relative to this example with Metricool, like you touch on it, like stats and timeliness, but to expand a little bit more on just stats and data overall, Well, I think what also helped in terms of, like, timeliness is that we were able to spot what's missing within coverage, and I think that's the important part that founders and even their PR teams need to think about when it comes to data. Look at the gaps of what's being covered and what is something that we can say new with the data versus reinforcing what's already being said out there, and that's a thought and like tip that we infuse here as the Metricool PR team that we think about constantly when it comes to pop culture moments. Because there will be times where the moment will pass by so fast that like maybe we aren't as fast to act on it. But what can we add to the conversation later on with data or perspective that's there?
Look for the gaps.
Yep,
That's what I'm
exactly.
here. Look for the gaps and bring great information to fill that.
Exactly.
Well, Chris, thank you so much for coming on. I loved this one. It's so fun. It's great to see everyone knows, again, the Coachella ecosystem is huge. So it's always interesting from an outside perspective to kind of see the intricacies of that. Love that we got your client a placement in Vogue. That's awesome. They have to be stoked on that. And for
Yes.
everyone listening, we're going to have another episode next week. And Chris, thank you so much. Loved this and love seeing you again.
Of course. Thank you for having me.